It is Thursday, December 14th, and this is The National.
Tonight, they are smarter and safer about drugs and alcohol. It's good news from Ontario's teenagers.
U.S. regulators changed the internet rules and say it's all about freedom. The critics say it's just freedom for the rich.
But we begin with the latest from that northern Saskatchewan plane crash scene and words from a survivor and rescuers.
As this plane was taken off, it didn't sound right for me, and I kind of went over my balcony. I kind of looked towards this way from my house to this area. I couldn't see the plane. I jumped over my balcony right away. I started my skidoo. They told us to stop, but we can't stop. There's people screaming for help. Everybody, we all know each other. We don't know who is in there, but all the people did help pretty good.
The Westwind aviation plane took off from Fond du Lac, bound for Stony Rapids, about 6 p.m. local time. It went down almost immediately, but authorities are giving out few other details at this point. Police have closed off the crash site to anyone not involved in the investigation. Certainly all 25 passengers and crew are fortunate to have survived. Not just the crash, but the bitter cold, though several people remain in hospital with serious injuries tonight, and all remain shaken by their ordeal. Olivia Stefanovic has some of their stories.
Ivan Adam, a Canadian Ranger, was the first to arrive at the crash site after he heard the impact.
I was asking for help, help, I think there's a plane crash.
When he arrived, he says he was overwhelmed.
And all I just said is there's people asking me for help, so all I could just get more people out here. We need a lot of hand here, a lot of people. Grab axe, crowbar.
Raymond Sanger also went to the scene. He followed cries into a dark forest. Arriving at the plane, he says he smashed his way into the cabin and comforted passengers.
Anything that would just cross my mind, I just talk in and holding my hand. I ask him, if you need anything or whatever you want, just squeeze my hand.
Despite being covered in airplane fuel, he says he gave up his jacket at one point to cover a shivering passenger.
I was cold, but I didn't care. I was just trying to help out.
Those efforts paid off.
I just really thought I was going to die.
16-year-old Timothy Fern is one of 25 people who remarkably survived.
We were just soaked in gas. When I first opened my eyes were burning because of the gas. I had gas in my mouth, in my nose, my eyes, everywhere.
Fern says he was knocked unconscious from the impact. When he woke up, he says he saw a woman hanging out of the aircraft.
I could not see her face or whatsoever. All I seen was blood, blood, blood.
But the community is still dealing with the shock.
We never expected, and no one was prepared for this sort of event, right? So it was something really, really terrifying, horrifying.
This afternoon, investigators trudged through northern Saskatchewan snow to get to the wreckage deep in the forest. They have many questions.
At the equipment, the aircraft, the operation of the aircraft, the operator, examining the wreckage, looking at weather conditions, examining the maintenance of the aircraft, and any other relevant information that is available.
In this small, tight-knit community, they can't get past the yellow tape now, but these residents are anxious to hear when it will be safe to fly again. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Regina.
And in that story, we heard from that young survivor, Timothy Fern, describing on CBC News Network what happened. Let's hear some more of that.
When we first took off, that was the highest we reached. And I kept looking out the window. I just had some weird feeling that my uncle, Arson Fern, knew something was wrong right away. He said he had a feeling. Then a few minutes later, it just all happened under 3 minutes tops. Before the engine cut, he yelled out, and then the first engine cut, then the second engine cut, and then we hit the ground. And when we hit the ground, I got knocked out. I was getting thrown around, but I had my seatbelt on, and then my cousin was sitting beside me. His name's Lyman Fern. And when he was sitting beside me, when I woke up upside down. And I noticed that his seat was gone and he wasn't beside me. Then I looked to my other, where I was sitting by the window, the whole wall was gone.
Hard to imagine living through that ordeal. And what about the airplane itself? We have not heard any indication of what may have caused the crash, but we did find out more about the type of plane that was involved. The European-made ATR-42 is a popular short-haul twin-engine turboprop used around the world. But there have been dozens of recorded incidents, including at least 10 fatal crashes in the plane's 30-plus year history. The deadliest, killing 54 people in Western New Guinea just 2 years ago. And extreme cold has been a factor in some cases. In 1994, U.S. officials instituted a limited ban on the ATR-42 over concerns at the time about icing on the wings. And today in Ontario, another crash, this one deadly. 4 workers were killed when a helicopter owned by the utility Hydro One plunged onto a farmer's field less than 2 weeks before Christmas.
That's all that's going through my mind. Like I'd want my, my family all together for Christmas, or my husband to come home, to go to work and come home safe and sound.
This happening in the tiny rural community of Flinton, about 2 hours southwest of Ottawa, and our Katie Simpson is there tonight.
The step-by-step search for what went wrong is well underway. Emergency vehicles now fill the open field where hydro crews had been working just hours before.
And I was in the house and heard a loud metal crashing and propeller being stopped, and I thought to myself, like, the helicopter just crashed. I hope not.
Kim Clayton says Hydro One had been doing maintenance on power lines around her property at the time of the crash. She says it took about 15 minutes for the first emergency responders to arrive.
I saw them go into the ambulance and nobody was leaving. I pieced it together that those guys didn't make it.
The Transportation Safety Board is now heading up the investigation.
We'll also be looking at pilot records, the training records for the pilot, aircraft maintenance records, the aircraft history, all that stuff we'll be looking at.
A source briefed on the crash tells CBC News the weather does not appear to have been a factor, and officials will focus on whether this is a case of either mechanical or human error.
The families have been notified at this time, and we would ask that you respect their wishes and we're not releasing the names at this time out of respect to the victims.
All of the victims worked for Hydro One, which is now trying to offer whatever comfort it can to their loved ones.
We're in the midst of the investigation. Investigative bodies are on the scene, and we're working diligently right now to ensure we have appropriate support for our team members that have worked with these individuals in addition to supporting the families.
You can see police are still here protecting the crash site. They'll stay through the overnight hours, even though there isn't much investigating they can do until first light tomorrow. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Flinton, Ontario.
And Adrian, let's turn now to a story that involves how we use technology and, perhaps more importantly, who gets to decide.
Right. This is about the net and the push to keep it as open as possible for as many people as possible. And the bottom line is, all the weeks of protests and arguments and celebrity appeals apparently didn't make a difference. Today was decision day on the net neutrality debate in the U.S.
The public can plainly see that a soon-to-be toothless FCC is handing the keys to the internet, one of the most remarkable, empowering, enabling inventions of our lifetime, over to a handful of multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Now, it wasn't unanimous, but as promised, the Federal Communications Commission voted to get rid of net neutrality in the U.S., a controversial decision which could have a profound impact on how Americans use the internet. So what is net neutrality? Back in 2015, in the U.S., regulations were put in place demanding internet service providers give Americans equal access to all websites. In other words, they couldn't play favorites, speeding up access to some sites or slowing down others. But now they can. With those regulations gone, some big companies could pay for access to their sites to be faster, while smaller companies may not be able to afford that. Loading their sites might just get slower. Court challenges have already been launched, and Congress may have a say as well. But in the meantime, U.S. net neutrality regulations are gone. And even though there are no plans to do away with similar rules here, many Canadians are still worried. Renee Filipponi shows us why.
Of course, smartphones also completely change our ability to access information.
Simple animations used to explain complicated science. This wildly popular YouTube site started with just two guys in Toronto and an idea.
When we started ASAP Science, it was literally like in our parents' basement. That's how it did work. We were uploading from the laptops that we use in university. We were using not a fancy camera.
Now they have more than 7 million subscribers. More than half are American. Having equal access to that massive market is how they got so big. Gregory Brown worries without net neutrality, others won't have the same chance.
I think, well, net neutrality is something that we relied on to start our business. It is why we were able to create something on the internet and have it flourish. Now it's a substantial thing, but at the time when we started it, it wasn't. And if net neutrality didn't exist, we wouldn't have been able to create this.
And it's not only about creating, it's about consuming for Canadians too.
Many of the services that we consume the most of, your Spotify's, your Netflix's, your Google, are all American companies. And those companies are going to find themselves in a position now where they'll be arranging financial deals with the big cable companies like Comcast and Verizon in order to ensure preferential access for their materials on the internet. And of course, that cost will be passed along downstream to consumers who subscribe to those services, including subscribers in Canada.
Take one.
Vancouver's Out TV is one of those companies that may have to pay to play. It produces content which is both broadcast on cable and streamed online. The U.S. is its biggest market too.
We are providing content in the U.S. We have a new show, for example, that now has 1.6 million streams in the U.S., and it's the largest market for our content in the world.
He worries in order to ensure viewers get equal access to their content, it will come at a price. And despite Ottawa's position in support of net neutrality, Brad Dank says things can always change.
Net neutrality protects everybody but a few people in a few companies. You know, for all of us, it's good for freedom of speech, but it's also good for good economics because it really helps entrepreneurship and innovation.
And while broadband providers in Canada say they support an open internet, the door is now open in the U.S. to change how the internet is delivered. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, so telecom giants in the U.S. could soon be judging, pricing, and prioritizing what customers do on the internet to maximize their profits and serve their purposes. Several countries already work that way. Take the Philippines. Your internet here on the phone, is it fast or is it slow?
Slow.
The net there isn't fast, it isn't cheap, and it certainly isn't neutral. Facebook, for one, made a deal with mobile providers there to offer its service for free, so you don't have to pay for data to use it. Great, you might think, except it means Facebook dominates the market and its algorithms dominate the discussion. When we were there in the spring, it was flooded with fake news, for example, in part about a political opponent of the Philippine president. Users were just left to guess what was real. Are they both real? Are they both fake?
I think they're both fake.
It's real or it's
yeah,
fake?
it is. About Dilemma, it is. Sometimes I feel like it's fake.
But if they wanted to find out for sure, go beyond Facebook to fact check, well, that would have cost extra, so a lot just don't bother. And there's the danger to democracy. Lies get planted and take root. To have the potential to make some facts more expensive is a lot of power. And that obviously isn't the only country wrestling with this, and it's an argument that's going to get louder, which also speaks to a debate that you're watching right here at home, Andrew.
Yeah, that's right, Adrian. But in this one, a young woman's life hangs in the balance. So this is a debate over medical ethics, and the outcome could literally mean the difference between life and death. Delilah Saunders' liver is failing. Today, she was in hospital, in and out of consciousness. She needs help. But her friends and family say she's being denied a transplant because she hasn't stayed sober for the 6 months required.
I do not feel that there is a basis that this is a valid argument whatsoever. It is an argument based on morality, and it's false morality.
And beyond that, they say Saunders, an Indigenous activist from Labrador, had her reasons for turning to alcohol. Her sister was murdered. Tom Perry picks up the story.
I don't want my baby to die. I'm just begging them to take it. I want them to help my baby.
Miriam Saunders and her husband have made the long journey from their home in Labrador to an Ottawa hospital to be with their daughter, Delilah. The young Inuk activist is suffering liver failure, her mother fearful she may lose another child.
She's only 26, same age as Loretta was when she was taken. I don't want them to take my baby too. I don't want them to take my baby.
Loretta was Delilah's sister. She was murdered in 2014. Delilah told her story when she appeared before the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women.
She had the best laugh. She had the best laugh.
Delilah has struggled with alcohol and received treatment for addiction. Her family says doctors have told them acetaminophen Delilah took for pain contributed to her liver damage, but they say it's her drinking that's put a transplant out of reach. In Ontario, patients need to be sober for at least 6 months to be eligible. It's a common requirement, but it's been challenged before. When Deborah Selkirk's husband died after being turned down for a liver transplant, she launched a human rights case to try to overturn the province's policy.
Because the public believes that alcoholics drink again, or people with substance use disorder drink again, they're afraid that they won't donate the liver of their deceased one because they think it might be wasted.
But transplant doctors say the guidelines are about results.
In many instances, when patients are abstinent from alcohol, their liver function recover and they may not need liver transplantation.
Ontario is set to launch a pilot project next summer to look at whether the evidence supports the rules. Delilah Saunders' family worries for her that will come too late. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
Beverly McLaughlin hung up her robe today after nearly 28 years on the Supreme Court of Canada. And tonight, this country's longest ever serving Chief Justice was celebrated at a gala.
She is, quite simply, a consummate Canadian, someone who wants to help build a better world and is willing to work very, very hard to make it happen.
The Prime Minister there, former Prime Ministers who paid tribute, Brian Mulroney, he was the one who appointed McLaughlin to the top court, and Jean Chrétien, he named her Chief Justice. Absent, though, was Stephen Harper, who was not invited tonight. An unprecedented spat broke out between McLaughlin and Harper back in 2014 after his office denounced her actions as, quote, inappropriate. Now, this was during the failed nomination of Marc Nadeau to the top bench. At the time, the Chief Justice denied allegations. She lobbied against Nadeau's appointment. She sat down with Rosemary earlier this week and opened up about that public attack on her.
I was worried that any such allegation could tarnish the administration of justice, could tarnish the office of Chief Justice, could tarnish the court. That was my main concern and the reason I put out the facts. But it turned out, I think, quite well.
And Beverly McLaughlin had a lot more to say about her extraordinary career. You can watch Rosie's full interview with her this Sunday on The National. Plus, coming up in about 10 minutes, the At Issue panel will give us their thoughts on the retiring Chief Justice.
Also ahead on The National, the lasting scars of the Grenfell tragedy 6 months later. We'll take you to the streets below the burned-out tower and meet people still dealing with grief, guilt, and anger.
Plus, the House of Mouse set to gobble up 21st Century Fox, what the mega merger means for your viewing habits.
And are the kids all right? New survey results say they are drinking less and doing fewer drugs. But why?
I feel like people are less social. They don't really go out as much.
It's because through the internet, it's easier for us to just talk at home and we don't feel like we need to meet up.
Well, on The National tonight, that certainly didn't take long. Within minutes of polls closing and the start of vote counting, the CBC News decision desk is projecting a winner in tonight's provincial by-election in Calgary-Lougheed. Jason Kenney, the leader of Alberta's new United Conservative Party, will have an overwhelming victory. This is a live shot of his party headquarters tonight. And the results, they're still technically coming in, but with more than half of polls reporting, and with Kenney having about 73% of the vote, it's just about locked up. This is not a surprise result, by the way, but it was the first big test for the former federal Conservative cabinet minister. Well, the federal government has issued new orders aimed at strengthening its rules on torture. The directive has been sent to the country's electronic spy agency, the Communications Security Establishment, as well as the Armed Forces and Global Affairs. It forbids them from using or passing along information obtained by another country through torture. The only exception is when that information is absolutely needed to prevent loss of life or significant personal injury. A similar directive was issued earlier this year to the RCMP and to CSIS. Well, a study out today points to a reality about teenagers that some people may find pretty surprising. For decades, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health has regularly surveyed thousands of Ontario kids about their drug and drinking habits. And as Christine Birak tells us, its latest numbers show that, in Ontario at least, when it comes to substance use, kids seem a lot smarter and a lot safer.
I think that's really good.
That's actually good.
Yeah.
That's good, yeah.
For all their rebellious angst, these Toronto teens aren't drinking, smoking, or toking as much as their parents did.
It's not really a thing anymore. There's like a few kids who do it. It's not as popular.
Why do you think that is?
I think people just got bored with it.
I think there's studies that show it's bad for brain development.
Researchers in Ontario say over the last 20 years, alcohol consumption among Ontario teens has dropped from 66 to 42%. The decline in cigarette smoking was even sharper, going from 28% down to 7%, and marijuana use fell from 28 to 19%. Researchers can't explain exactly why substance abuse rates are dropping among teens. They suspect public health campaigns are finally paying off.
Green.
And their messaging has changed, become less negative.
Like, we all make mistakes, we all screw things up.
Michael Stroh smoked pot almost every day from age 13 to 30. Now he talks to students about how it damaged his emotional and cognitive development. And teens are listening.
None of this happened when I was in high school. There was no mental health awareness, no talking about drugs, it was, this is your brain on drugs. And they would like crack the egg in the frying pan. It was like, and if I had other people that I could identify with and be like, wow, that guy smoked as much weed as me and here he is telling me about it, that might have made a big difference for me.
Another factor that could account for the decline, fewer parties.
I feel like people are less social. They don't really go out as much. You just you interact with people through social media. And there's not really a need to go out and do things, go to parties, that type of thing. So it's less common.
Maybe it's because through the internet, it's easier for us to just talk at home and we don't feel like we need to meet up.
Which may change once they reach college or university. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, it wasn't all good news in the CAMH report. For the first time, researchers asked a new question this year about fentanyl. Turns out, a little under 1% of Ontario kids asked had used the drug in the past year. That's 5,800 high school-aged kids, a number that, in the words of the report's authors, is alarming.
Still ahead on the National.
We've made some clarifications around the rules we put forward for small business in Canada.
The finance minister announced more changes to the contentious small businesses tax reforms. Rosie is here with our At Issue panel to talk about the latest chapter in Bill Morneau's tax climb down.
I think we have obviously have new powers that weren't there before '82. Have we been too activist? I don't think on the whole the courts have been. I think they're trying to do their job of upholding the Constitution and upholding the law.
Today is the end of the McLaughlin Court, Beverly McLaughlin's last day as Chief Justice of Canada's Supreme Court. That was from an interview I did with her on Tuesday. You can see the full thing on the National this coming Sunday. And even though I'm in New York City on assignment, At Issue must go on. So let's do that. Let's talk more about the Supreme Court, who was appointed this week, and the legacy McLaughlin leaves behind. Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, Chantal Hébert in Montreal, and joining us for the first time, Kelly Kreiderman, and she is in Calgary. Chantal, I'll start with you on this if I can. What do you make of what Beverly McLaughlin said there about activism, and whether she in fact did make the Supreme Court more activist, or whether it was just a result of the charter?
I'm not sure that she made it more activist. I think the activism came before she became Chief Justice. The Morgentaler ruling on abortion, for instance, predates her. But I think that it is true that over all those years that she was Chief Justice, the court became more central and certainly more present in the minds of many Canadians. And it also managed the feat that the media, Parliament, and many other institutions did not manage, and that is to hang on to its credibility.
And so, Andrew, does that mean that the court, that Beverly McLaughlin, I guess, has left the court in a better place? Are you willing to go there?
Yeah, I mean, it is, as Chantal said, it's a central part of many of our conversations. It has laid down landmark rulings that have stood the test of time. I think you could also see an increasing tendency, I think, in the later years for the court to be a little bit all over the map. I mean, not activist per se. Conservatives like to call activism anytime the court strikes down a law. But it does matter whether you're striking down the law based on a coherent and reasonable reading of the Constitution. And likewise, sometimes courts will uphold laws that they should have struck down. And again, you could call that a kind of an activism. And I think that would be my criticism more, is that it was hard, increasingly hard, to find any kind of consistent or coherent through line in the reasoning. A lot of times it looked like the court had a destination it was bound and determined to get to, and it would figure out the reasoning that would get it there later. So it would, set aside established precedent with only a kind of a fig leaf of reasoning, or it would cherry pick legislation, the relevant provisions. So I don't think they're above criticism, but they've certainly made their mark and are a central part of their constitutional firmament.
And Kelly, what did you make of what the former Chief Justice had to say there?
I think, she kind of was there as the Supreme Court grew up from the Constitution and the Charter in 1982 as it became more refined, as the court found its place. She became the standard bearer for gender parity on the Supreme Court. And I also think it's a strength that she was difficult to pigeonhole. She was activist. She struck down mandatory minimums, which riled the government of the day, the conservative government of the day. At the same time, just this fall, she was warning that as sexual assault cases are heard, the presumption of innocence and the imperative to make sure that guilty people or innocent people are not found guilty still stands. So I think, her strength was her ability to bring cohesion to the court and to not pigeonhole herself one way or the other, I think, in a lot of cases.
But I think she was also, and she wouldn't probably agree with me on that, but I think she was in the end fortunate to have these conflicts with Stephen Harper. It certainly raised the profile of the court, but it also raised the profile of the notion of the rule of law, which I think is important. And I think for many Canadians, it brought a better understanding of what the court is about. And from that angle, not being totally predictable, not to the point of inconsistency, is probably an advantage, because if the Supreme Court is that predictable, then it becomes kind of a body of the status quo. You know what they're going to say, so you go there to get what you want. And I don't think you would want that from the Supreme Court.
But oftentimes logical consistency...
Okay, Andrew, go ahead, yep.
Oftentimes logical consistency will appear to be unpredictable. So that's fine. As I say, I think in some cases the logic wasn't there in some of their rulings. As you say, Chantal, they were at daggers drawn sometimes with the Harper government, and I think the Harper government's unreasonability in one direction was sometimes mirrored by the court's own unreasonability.
Okay, I want to switch topics just to sort of close the circle on tax reform, and maybe not on Bill Morneau, but maybe on tax reform. Here's what he had to announce this week.
I understand that people running small businesses want to make sure that they have regulations that are easily understood and easy to work with. So what we've done here is we've made it very clear.
We believe there is too much uncertainty and too much confusion for the government to proceed on the timelines it has suggested to Canadians.
That, of course, was the Senate trying to push back a little bit on the tax reform plan, even though the government has put some water in their wine. Kelly, do you think that the finance minister has a mandate to go forward with this tax reform, given how terribly it was rolled out the first time?
I think the government is intent on rolling out the tax reform, whether, they have a mandate of it, they have, they were elected on promises somewhat like what they've rolled out. I think the problem is, from the time the Prime Minister talked about small businesses taking advantage of tax loopholes in the 2015 election, and last July, there was a lot of space. They also promised to lower the small business tax, and that had kind of gone by the wayside at that time, too. I think there was a real surprise in the way that this was all rolled out that is going to stick to the government in terms of the messaging, in terms of talking about taking advantage of tax schemes. And I don't think that changes. And I don't think that changes no matter the nuts and bolts rolled out and the adjustments made to the policy. I think that it's going to stick for the Liberal government.
Does it do enough to put this to bed for Bill Morneau, Chantal?
No, I don't think the Bill Morneau thing can be put to bed until whoever is the ethics commissioner rules on whatever he or she, because there's going to be a change, is looking into. But I'm not so sure that it's going to stick to the government, because it happened in the first 2 years of the mandate. And because, in theory, a government warned is a government that doesn't repeat its own mistakes. So I'm not convinced that a year and a half from now we're going to be talking about this, depending on how they handle the future.
Well, Bill Morneau himself is greatly damaged by this. I mean, the intent of the legislation was fine. There are, thousands of people have been incorporating themselves to reduce their tax burden. That's problematic from a number of perspectives. But they did it in the most complicated possible way. They've subsequently made revisions that have narrowed its scope and made it somewhat simpler, but it's still going to give people fits. But the bigger political damage was nobody seemed to ask themselves, as they were framing this legislation to go after people for setting up private corporations to reduce their tax burden, geez, do you think anybody will mention our private corporations, our meaning Bill Morneau's and indeed Justin Trudeau's? And I think Chantal's right that we're not necessarily going to be talking about this issue 2 years from now, but there's a narrative that's now been constructed for the opposition of entitled rich kids running the government. And that's not just with this, that's with, the dinners with the Chinese billionaires and the holidays with the Aga Khan. That narrative may cling more, and that's something the Liberals have to be very aware of.
Well, last word to you, Chantal, on that. I just wonder what it does to the Liberals and the notion of taxes, which is, a dirty word regardless, probably for lots of Canadians, but particularly if you're a Liberal, does it taint them in any way?
I have to measure what happened in those by-elections, and I know that by-elections are only that, but I have to measure the fact that it didn't have a tremendous negative impact on them and all the noise in the House of Commons. And I'm more struck by the disconnect between the two than by the gist or the substance of the argument. I am not picking up on the ground this notion that this is a government of rich kids who are ruling tax changes to benefit themselves. So maybe that will penetrate. I believe they're smart enough to walk away from that.
Okay, I got to leave it there. Andrew, Chantal, and Kelly, thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. Now, to kick off the new year, At Issue is going to take some of your questions. Send them our way. Tweet us with the hashtag #AskAtIssue. Email us if you want at thenational@cbc.ca, or leave a comment on the Facebook live stream. Watch the panel on January 4th to see if Andrew, Chantal, or Althea, who will be joining us that day, answered any of your questions.
May we be saved from all that threatens us.
In a packed St. Paul's Cathedral today, a service to mark 6 months since London's Grenfell Tower fire. Royalty and celebrities were there, but more importantly, those who survived the disaster and the family members of those who did not. 71 people were killed when the apartment complex was engulfed in flames. Hundreds more were left homeless and traumatized by what happened that night. Margaret Evans returned to the neighborhood to see how people are coping.
A ghetto of pain. That's what the streets in the shadow of Grenfell Tower have come to represent. A whole neighborhood branded by the mark of tragedy and feeling somehow judged for it. The looming husk of its dark remains is inescapable for the people living near it.
We feel like we're in a little bubble in this area. It's like reality is different.
Samia Badani lives next to the tower.
And we still don't understand what happened. And the chaos actually after the fire, this constant state of crisis meant that we never had the time to try and heal.
Oh my God, they're screaming! Like so many who either survived Grenfell's flames or watched as they took those trapped inside, Badani is waiting for counseling. Helping the community has become its own therapy.
I don't know if it's guilt that night I couldn't help, but walking away now without having something positive feels like a betrayal.
No justice! No peace! No justice!
Anger still lives on the streets, aimed at the local council, one of the richest in London. Despite pledges to the contrary from the council and the British Prime Minister, only 1 out of every 5 Grenfell households has been permanently resettled.
Why are they still living in hotels?
Judy Bolton is with Justice for Grenfell. She says the council has treated the neighborhood with contempt.
One of the things that a lot of the survivors have said is that they feel like they're coming to the authorities with a begging bowl.
Bolton lost 3 friends in the fire. She has trouble sleeping.
I close my eyes and all I can remember and see is the sky red. We recently had Halloween with bonfire night and everything, and it broke me.
It is a neighborhood full of the broken. Tonight, they gathered together in a silent march, with outsiders joining in to remember the dead and those who tried to help them. But the fear is that the memory will quickly fade and that the fire will have changed nothing. The British government has identified 285 tower blocks across the country with flammable cladding just like that on Grenfell Tower. Some of that cladding is coming down, but it's up to local councils or private owners to decide whether or not to remove it. Scotland Yard has said its investigation will consider manslaughter charges, but not before forensic work finishes at the tower. In the meantime, residents say they will remain an inconvenient truth, calling for accountability. In this neighborhood, justice for the dead is the only thing that will help the living. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
And this is a tragedy that has left scars on a lot of people. Health officials estimate up to 11,000 people living near the tower could be suffering from post-traumatic stress or other psychological impacts. A team has been formed to go door to door, screening people for symptoms.
Outwit and outlast could be Vladimir Putin's motto. His political nerve was on full display today in a marathon press conference in Moscow. It's an end-of-year ritual for the Russian president, baiting his enemies, knocking rivals, even making a dig at Canada. It comes as Putin is seeking a 4th term in a March election. As Chris Brown tells us, Putin fully expects to trounce the competition.
Vladimir Putin dominates Russian politics like no other. And for 4 hours today, he charmed, lectured, and at times belittled the world's media at a giant news conference. Isn't it boring for you without a strong competitor? Asked one journalist of the Russian president, who's up for re-election in March. To which Putin replied, it's important to offer a plan, not just to make noise and protest. That was a veiled reference to Alexei Navalny, an anti-corruption crusader who could be Putin's toughest opponent if the Kremlin would let him run. His critics say fraud charges, which make his candidacy illegal, were fabricated. TV personality Ksenia Sobchak is also challenging Putin in the election and, in an unusually pointed question for Russian politics, asked why his opponents constantly face intimidation, even the risk of being killed. Putin tersely suggested his foes are only interested in destabilizing Russia and causing chaos. Not only is this event one of the most important on the political calendar, it may in fact be the largest news conference Vladimir Putin has ever had. Over 400 technicians helped set it up with tons of gear and 1,600 journalists from around the world. Clearly, though, a lot of those journalists were Putin supporters. Many clapped at his answers. And only 2 Western media outlets were picked to ask questions, but not us. Canada, though, did come up once to do with the doping scandal during the last Sochi Olympics. Putin suggested some of the illegal drugs Russian athletes used to cheat were smuggled in from Canada, a stunning accusation which has never been mentioned in any report. It is indicative, though, of a frequent refrain by Putin that the West is at the root of most of Russia's problems. Chris Brown, CBC News, Moscow.
Go deeper on the stories of the day earlier in the day. Subscribe to our newsletter at cbcnews.ca/The National. The National today takes you inside our journalism every afternoon.
On The National tonight, some good news for an Ontario family left in the lurch. A bank draft worth about $850,000 went missing, and their bank refused to simply issue a new one. But just hours after CBC News first reported the story, TD Canada Trust apologized.
If I sound frustrated, I am.
And there's been many nights of lost sleep.
Yeah.
Gnashing of teeth and anger and frustration.
That's John and Lorette Taylor. Last February, courier company UPS lost that massive bank draft. The money was for an inheritance for Lorette's brother. She says her local branch assured her there were procedures in place if the draft was lost or stolen, but when she reported it missing, TD stalled. And at one point, she said they wanted her to agree to be held liable for life if the draft was ever cashed illegally. Fast forward to today. 10 months after the draft went missing, TD has acknowledged it made some mistakes. In an email to CBC News, a spokesperson said, "It is clear to us we didn't get this right along the way, and that there was more we could have done to come to a resolution faster." And this afternoon, TD told CBC News that a resolution has been reached and that a new bank draft has been sent to the Taylor family's lawyer. And in Montreal tonight, crews worked to get a 4-alarm fire under control at the site of an unfinished condo building. So far, there are no reports of injuries, and investigators are looking into how it started.
Now, its mascot may be a mouse, but Disney doesn't do anything small, and the Mammoth Corporation could be about to get a whole lot bigger. Disney wants to buy most of the entertainment assets of 21st Century Fox. Some say this is more than just a corporate mega merger. It is a glimpse into the future of television. Jacqueline Hansen has more on that.
Let it go, let it go. The creator of Frozen is letting go of old rivalries and old ways of doing business, just as consumers are. Disney's deal to buy most of 21st Century Fox is a $67 billion bet that traditional content creators can evolve to keep up with and maybe even outpower the new kids, the streaming giants.
This acquisition reflects a changing media landscape, increasingly defined by transformative technology and evolving consumer expectations.
Netflix set the bar high, giving consumers what they want to watch when they want it. And it further disrupted the industry by creating its own content, like one of its latest, Stranger Things.
Maybe all of this is happening for a reason.
Disney wants in on the new game. In the US, it's pulling its content off of Netflix and starting its own streaming services there in 2019. Today's deal with Fox gives it a controlling stake of Hulu, a rival streaming service.
Puts Disney in a position to compete both internationally and in the US with Netflix and Amazon.
Hulu also creates some of its own original content, including its recent hit, The Handmaid's Tale.
Better never means better for everyone.
But Hulu isn't available in Canada yet, and Disney's other streaming plans so far don't include Canada either. Still, increased competition could eventually mean more choice, similar to a la carte cable TV.
If you sort of expand that into not just channels, but you're actually picking services, we should actually wind up paying about the same if you watch a lot, but if you don't watch a lot, you'll be paying a lot less.
In this case, more streaming services in the hands of just one company. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
The deal is still subject to regulatory approval, but both companies are confident it will go through. And this comes just as a similar deal. AT&T's acquisition of Time Warner is being challenged in court. Now, this deal has some superhero fans very excited.
Here we all are, with nothing but our wit and our will to save the world.
So here's why. When it comes to cinematic rights, Disney owns the Avengers, Fox owns the X-Men and the Fantastic Four.
None of that matters.
So now, for the first time, fans could see them all in the same film. So a 16-year-old from Louisiana tweeted a video Tuesday night that has now been seen by millions. It shows Ayrton Little opening up an email with news that he has been accepted to his dream school, Harvard. And what happens next is hands down our moment of the day.
You see it? Yeah. View update. Or not.
So you have to know, this is an amazing family. His older brother got accepted into Stanford just last week. They had a younger brother who died a few years ago of an asthma attack, but they say he was actually the smartest of the bunch.
Wow. I have to ask, though, I wonder what would have happened if the result hadn't gone his way. I mean, they're filming the whole thing. His friends are there. I'm glad it went the way it did.
Yeah, well, you know, in that case, you just don't post it. There are probably thousands of videos that go unposted, but may we all have a moment of joy like that, whether we video it or not.
Okay, thanks, everybody. That is The National for Thursday, December 14th. Good night.
Good night. Good night.